Health and Power Through Creation by Paul Ellsworth, page 63. Chapter 5, How to Master Habit. As each human being reaches the plane of more or less assured and masterful expression in the line of his or her life work, it becomes evident that certain race habits which have hitherto persisted have become meaningless and undesirable. This growth in wisdom is the foundation of all true reform, for it cuts the root of undesirable habit in the desire and approbation of the individual. Until a man sees the worthlessness and silliness of any of these excrescences of habit and custom, it is useless to try to force reform upon him. In this chapter on habit, I want to get down to the practical application of some of the less commonly understood mental and spiritual laws, and to do that I must start at the beginning. For this reason, I want to go back to the first chapter of this book for a moment and ask you to read again the definition there set forth of sin. Sin is an unscientific and wasteful method of striving for a desirable end. The end of every true desire is expression. That is, the real hunger in the artist's soul is to paint with swiftness and spontaneity and mastery. The businessman's real desire is for breadth of vision and efficiency of action. The writer desires to master the hearts of men, to make them laugh with him and cry with him, to see the world with his own keen vision. These things are real desires, and because every man is organized for one particular success, every human being has within him both the root of this true desire and the means of its fulfillment. Now, the habits which men must learn to master before they can show forth the mastery in their work which is normal to all are the results of false desires. The liquor habit, the tobacco habit, temper, lust, the habit of catching cold or having grippe or hay fever. All of these things are founded directly or indirectly on the victim's belief in the desirability of certain things that are not at all desirable when they are understood. And they are all manifestations of short circuits in the human dynamo, although part of them are farther advanced than the others and have reached the seed time or result stage. The influenza habit is the ripened seed of other unwise habits. Lust is a short circuit in its early stages, and its results are to be found in other habits, most of which their victim does not associate with their real cause. The short circuits which we are going to consider are all false ways of thinking or feeling. The man who has found himself and his work does not eat too much, and he is not intemperate. This is the result of his having found his true sphere of expression. His power and mastery are the causes of temperance rather than its results. The fact that many men overeat and overdrink with impunity shows that these things, however undesirable, are not in themselves direct causes of sickness, but are rather the essences which give flavor or individuality to the disease. The real cause of sickness and pain and inefficiency is always a short circuit of emotion which not only depletes the organism of its rightful energy, but turns that energy into actually destructive action within the body. One other popular misconception in regard to this matter of health and strength and harmony of expression must be corrected before we can get down to the real science of mastering habit. Power does not come as a reward of right living, but rather as a result. That is, the man who makes a plaything of his emotions and appetites is not punished by an arbitrary judge for his excesses. His loss of power and joy is simply a logical and mathematically accurate result of his having violated a law. The man of keen thoughts and tense emotions suffers more for his sins than his lethargic companion. Because he has sinned more, his voltage is higher. He is turning into the wrong channels, more life and life at a higher tension. It is all a matter of law, And if one man seems to sin with impunity while another suffers the tortures of the damned, it is because this matter of sinning is not what it appears to be. But the law, properly understood, can be followed by anyone, and obedience to this law of being ensures power and health and their sequent success. The habits of feeling and thinking and doing, which must be brought under the direct control of the judgment in this matter of masterful living, may be divided into three classes. First come those habits which are purely emotional in their means of expression. Anger, fear, jealousy, worry, irritation. These may be considered primary habits. That is, they are the first links in a chain of cause and effect rather than its middle or terminal links. Second come those sensual habits which are first mental but then lead to a physical expression. Alcoholism, drug habits, and last and least understood, sexual perversion. These are chiefly primary habits also. The third class of habits are terminal. They are the results of other habits, but have a tendency to reoccurrence even after their cause is largely removed. Among these are the hay fever habit and the cold habit, influenza, sick headache, etc. Many physical causes of these habits have been brought forward, but the fact is that they are 99% habit and can be mastered by the same means which bring control of the tobacco habit or of fits of temper. I have mentioned among these false modes of expression the habit of sexual perversion. So much has been written on this subject, and so much of both truth and false has been taught, that I would willingly leave all discussion of it out of this book. A few things in connection with sex energy must be understood, however, if assured and abiding success is to be made possible. The central and all-important fact in regard to this function of sex, which I want to make plain, is that the sexual battery was created to serve two purposes in the human economy. First, the commonly understood function of reproduction. Second, the glandular part of these structures belong to the class of ductless glands, whose secretions or enzymes play so important a role in regulating oxidation, digestion, assimilation, etc. The first of these functions is one which, in the normal and orderly course of human life, would be rarely exercised. The second is a constant and supremely important one. The next series of facts in regard to this matter is this. Because of the fact that man has come to look to the wrong class of activities for his satisfaction, to sensual expression rather than creative, the balance and harmony between these two functions of the sexual system have been destroyed. Instead of this supremely important enzyme being regularly taken up by the blood and lymph, it is turned into other channels, and the body is robbed of one of its chief elixirs of regeneration. The secretion from the suprarenals is capable of supplying this waste to a certain extent, but in nature there is no absolute duplication of function, and the life which is thrown away in false modes of expression cannot be saved except by an understanding of the truth and its regular application. The gist of this matter may be stated in this way. The sexual system was created to serve two purposes. First, the infrequent one of the transmission of life. Second, the continuous and supremely important one of bodily regeneration. The element of sensual gratification did not enter into the original design of divine life, and its introduction and emphasis by man results in physical decrepitude, premature senility, and death. That is all there is to the matter, and no amount of argument can change one jot or tittle of the law. It is one thing to realize the uselessness, undesirability, and eventual destructiveness of an action, however, and quite another to break that chain of periodic repetition which is called habit. We have considered the nature of false expression, of temper, lust, and periodic sickness. Now, how are these habits to be done away with, after we have finally decided to rid our lives of them? First, we must understand the nature of the force we are combating. Habit is the tendency to the more or less rhythmic or regular repetition of certain isolated acts. Now, each of these isolated acts is preceded by an impulse, and every impulse has a root. First, there are the exterior roots to impulse. The drunkard sees a saloon or a glass of beer, and an impulse to drink asserts itself. Second come the purely mental impulses. A stray thought suggests the master desire. Third, among these roots of impulse comes what may be termed the rhythmic tendency of subjective mind. That is, at fairly regular intervals, the mind below the threshold of consciousness begins to stir and move uneasily, and to send up suggestions toward a certain kind of action. This is habit in its purest form. The first step towards securing self-mastery is to have an understanding with yourself as to your real nature and the desires consistent with this nature. You can do this in somewhat such words as these. I am an expression of the divine life, and in my entire being there is nothing that is not derived from this source. Divine life is perfect in every respect, and therefore in life and in substance, in desire, thought, and action, it is natural and normal for me to be perfect. The perfect thing for me to desire is mastery of expression in every department of my being, which includes health, serene effectiveness in my work, and harmony between myself and all other forms of this primal life. Everything that consumes energy without producing an equivalent or that tears down life and organism instead of building it up is unscientific. The real joy of life is working masterfully in living harmoniously in my body and in the world. This understanding cuts the root within yourself of lust, intemperance, and all the social discords, anger, jealousy, etc. By it, you have recognized your normal independence of all these things. Now you are ready to devote your whole energy and desire to weed out the seeds and sprouts of false desire. In this direct attack upon habit, 6 principles will help you. First, see yourself meeting temptation successfully and use affirmations which positively recognize the natural existence within you of the virtue or power you are beginning to build. For destroying the lust habit, for instance, see yourself walking serene and masterful where you have usually fallen, and aid this visualizing exercise by repeating, the divine life in me is serene purity and cleanliness, and I desire only that which is consistent with my nature. Use this affirmation as you have already learned to use all affirmations. Second, foresee temptation as far as possible and be on your guard against it. You know where and why you have fallen before. Third, when temptation comes, whether you have foreseen it or whether it comes swiftly and unexpectedly, strike first and strike hard. Have a ready affirmation or statement of truth which covers as fully as possible your conception of the positive quality you are building, and grab it just as you would grasp a weapon in a physical encounter. Remember Van Bibler's 10 rules for conduct in a fight? Rule 1 was always strike the first blow. The other 9 he had forgotten, but he found that when he used the first one, the others didn't usually matter. So don't waste time arguing. Don't consider both sides of the question for an instant, but start your counter thought at once. Fourth, if you fail, turn back into the way you have decided upon at once, and without wasting time in regretting your temporary defeat. Fifth, learn as quickly as possible to use the remedy of ignorance, which will be fully described later in this chapter. Sixth, turn your energies into other channels by going to work. The third rule of conquering habit was to strike first and strike hard. One of the methods of striking was seen to be through the use of a previously selected key thought or affirmation. There is another means of combating the power of habit, which is even less known and which is of invaluable assistance in these pitched battles. It is based upon the fact that every emotional change, before it can become effective, must produce a change in the circulation. Usually there is a rushing of blood to the solar and sacral plexi and, in the case of anger, to the head. This disturbance of circulation is in reality a very important step in the consummation of the act which continues the chain of habit. And by preventing this disturbance of the blood flow, we can in a great measure check the impulse toward action. But the flow of the blood is not to be controlled by will, you will say. That is one of the beliefs which people accept without test, and which is far from the truth. The distribution of the blood in the body can be very easily influenced by the trained will, nor is this exercise one which requires months or years of discipline. Here is an elementary exercise which will furnish you with the key to the control of your own circulation. Sit down in an easy chair, one with a back high enough to support your head. Place your hands easily on your lap and be sure that all muscular strain and all nervous tension are perfectly relaxed. Now, with your eyes closed, direct your attention to your hands. Don't try to see them, to visualize them with your eyes closed, but center your attention on the feeling in them. You are usually unconscious of the fact that every part of the body manifests this feeling to a certain extent. It is, in fact, the direct evidence of your indwelling life in the tissues. For you permeate your body and are not merely a dweller in the upper story or head as you imagine yourself to be. Your life permeates the tissues, and by attention unwaveringly concentrated upon the vibratory sensation in any part, you can quicken the consciousness of your life there. Now, as you hold your attention firmly upon your hands, or within your hands, you will find this sensation increasing. With practice, you will be able to make your hands tingle and grow warm and moist. This is the fruition of what control of the circulation within your tissues which you demonstrated in lesser degree when you slightly quickened the feeling in your hands. Practice this with various parts of the body, particularly the arms, legs, neck, and head. Now consider again the fact upon which the use of this new power is based. In controlling the emotion which lies back of an undesirable action, the vibrations of the plexi must be lowered. This you do by raising the vibratory rate of other parts of the body. As an illustration, suppose that you are given to fits of anger. Now, as far as may be, foresee the approach of such outbreaks. That is, be on your guard against them. But when one eludes your vigilance and gets within your outer defenses, while it is still in the primary stage, during which your scalp creeps and your abdomen feels numb and your muscles are twitching and tense, force your attention away from the thing which is striving to hold it and fasten it upon your hands. If you have practiced the vibratory exercise faithfully, you will be able quickly to divert the congestion of blood from the nerve centers to your hands and arms, and this counter movement of the circulation will break the power of your temptation. This method can be used in connection with affirmations. At the time you are drawing the blood away from the nerve centers, repeat firmly this formula: "Thou in me art power and harmony." The idea of harmonizing power is what you are striving to express, and you will find that the two methods work perfectly together. Add to them the third rule, which teaches you to strike first, to strike hard, and without the delay of a moment, and the sixth, which prescribes an immediate use of the power release from false expression in absorbing and worthwhile work. And you will find that habit is less formidable than you have heretofore found it. The usual effort is to inhibit energy, to dam up one outlet without providing another. This is impossible. I have mentioned the remedy of ignorance. This rather clumsy word refers to the power which lies in ignoring something which is striving to bring itself to our attention. The fact of the matter is that an impulse which is not acted upon speedily dies, whether it is a good impulse or a bad one. The people who doubt this are confusing mental action with idleness. That is, they imagine that because they do not act upon an impulse through bodily motion, they are not acting upon it at all, when they may be acting intensely upon it in that part of the mind called imagination. A mental act is just as potent in keeping an impulse alive and nursing it along to where it is powerful enough to break through into physical action as physical action itself would be. Wisely directed observation will show you that every yielding to temptation is preceded by a time of turmoil, during which something outside of yourself apparently suggests a forbidden action. But until you give power to this suggestion by considering it, it is powerless. The step between suggestion of a thought and its acceptance by the will and imagination is so short and usually is so thoughtlessly taken that many will doubt this theory and will insist that a temptation springs up in the imagination itself and has to be resisted there. It is eternally true, however, that there is a time in the history of every action when it is simply a suggestion considered by judgment and will. At this stage, it is without power, is cold and lifeless. But if it is taken into imagination and turned over by the master decorator, even for an instant, it absorbs life and power from us. Our minds have become houses divided against themselves, and the ensuing battle, if it is fought at all, will be a terrible one. The torments of those who are resisting habit comes from the fact that they first let the imagination accept a suggestion of the pleasurableness of an action and then strive to fight against their own life as it breathes life into this suggestion. As a matter of fact, the habit of admitting temptations into the imagination and thinking about them only to inhibit by supreme and agonizing effort of will the logical outworking of this thought in action is worse than useless. Such thoughts poison the mind more than do those which are considered briefly and put into action. The secret of denying attention to a primary impulse once mastered, you will find that a very little power applied at the right moment will do more than 1,000 times more effort exerted later on. If you have built a firm foundation for your change of habit by considering the truth about yourself and your work, and have mastered the secret of vibratory control of the circulation, you will soon recognize in this method the coup de grace, the death of undesirable action. I don't want to give the impression that even by scientific methods, this flywheel of habit can be reversed without effort and attention. Self-mastery is not a thing which lazy people can drift into by pressing any metaphysical buttons. It is a matter of study and self-discipline, but it is worth it. As a wise and careful reinvestment of financial surplus will eventually bring financial power, so the conservation of vital energy and its reinvestment in the regeneration of the body will inevitably ensure the mastery and power of a superhuman to him who consistently follows it. Habit does not give up without a fight. The time of transition from sensual and emotional anarchy to self-mastery is usually a time of disagreeable sensations and uncomfortable experiences. And if the lapse from wise living has been of long duration, this transition is not to be effected in a day or in a week. There will soon come, however, a knowledge of growing power and energy of a new force being built up within. And this matter of mastering habit is not one for a select few. The man in the gutter can do it if he will begin at the beginning and do his best. Men were not made for gutters or for paupers' graves, and as soon as any human being makes up his mind to be clean and effective, he can be sure that universal law is back of his desire and will help him if he will help himself. There is a certain and unfailing way of regeneration, and no man is too far gone to follow it. One of the most important things in connection with the use of this system of conquering habit is the use made of the time directly after a temporary defeat. These defeats are apt to come at first, and there are two things to be observed in connection with them. First, get up at once and renew your fight. Second, notice how you happened to fall, just what the inciting incident was, and where you failed in applying the principles of mastery. Remember that the fall itself is relatively important, but that the use you make of the period of slackened energy following it is vital. Your tendency will be to feel discouraged, but the wise thing is not to feel at all, but to think and act. Remember that the tension of habit slackens immediately following such a victory as this, and that you can do much by the right and energetic use of affirmations to strengthen your foundation of self-knowledge against the next assault. The truth always is that you are an expression of the divine life and are naturally and basically perfect in desire and effort. Get back of this, and by affirmation and denial, proceed to replace the old lies upon which false habit is based. It is neither necessary nor desirable to get out of the world to run away from temptation. Learn to know and to realize at all times the truth about life and about yourself, and you will find that temptation is rooted in a mass of lies which you have accepted from your ancestors and your neighbors. As you progress in this matter of self-mastery, you will find that while habit sometimes comes back with every appearance of its old power and mastery, this is but a bluff, and that in reality its old-time energy is gone. If you meet it without hesitating an instant and turn all your attention into the wise channels of expression with which you have determined to replace it, you will find that it is but a ghost of its former self and will fade into thin air without giving you battle. But, on the other hand, if you hesitate, dallying with the temptation which you believe to be no longer dangerous, you will find the enemy quickly gaining power, and you will have your battle to fight and win all over again. Make your attack on error swift and deadly whenever it reappears. If the habit you are striving to overcome is largely emotional, such as temper or fear, be especially on your guard against the inductive influence of such emotions in other people around you. Irritation and anger quickly beget anger in those who are brought into contact with these primary currents, unless they understand the nature of this inductive action and guard against it. In concluding this chapter, I want to give you 3 affirmations which you may find useful in combating habits of perverted expression. The first is a statement of the truth about life and body and can be used to great effect in getting rid of the habit of taking cold or of having sick headache, etc. Remember to use it promptly on the first appearance of symptoms and to consider the statement of truth rather than the symptoms. Thou art the life and substance of my being, and thy life in me is perfect, radiantly effective. Thou art my life and body, and thou art eternally whole. The second and third are different statements of the same truth in regard to man and his natural and satisfactory modes of expression and work. I am the life and substance of divine mind, and I find true satisfaction only in creative mastery. The knowledge of this truth frees me in thought, desire, and action from bondage to lies of the senses. I am the life and substance of the divine mind, and the recognition of this truth frees me from every false desire. End of chapter 5.